Next on Wildlife Emergency. Doctors struggle to repair a screech owl's tiny wing.
All right, guys, your cat is here.
A bobcat, struck by a car, gets help from an ancient healing practice.
All right, Mr. Cooper.
And a Cooper's hawk with a ruptured air sac fights for freedom.
Take money into radiology.
We've got a problem here.
Right.
We have the opportunity to give these animals a second chance.
But he's a little one.
He's a very small one.
Nice, strong heartbeat.
He's very handsome. Wildlife, humans are a big part of the problem, and I just want to try to be part of the solution.
You need to turn her up a lot more.
You not only need to read the mind of your coworkers, you need to read the mind of your patient.
About 5 minutes to go before we hit 3 hours.
To save a wild animal's life and get it back into the wild, that's what it's all about.
At the Wildlife Center of Virginia, we treat animals of all kinds. But when we treat certain animals, we handle them very carefully.
Still alive here? Oh, yeah, he's still alive.
He's pretty feisty.
All right, guys, your cat is here.
Struck by a car, the patient in this carrying case is a bobcat, 7.5 pounds of fighting fury. Proceed with caution.
I'd let go if I were you, Ned.
I need to sedate this bobcat before we get him out of this carrier. When the bobcat got here, his front half worked just fine. His claws and his teeth were in perfect working order, but it looked like his back end indeed didn't work quite right.
In fact, the bobcat's back legs are paralyzed. And after anesthetizing the animal, Dr. Ned examines it to determine the nature of the injury.
Well, his bladder's intact anyway, and both iliac wings, iliac crests, palpate solid. If he's broke, I don't feel it.
No, because he's very symmetrical.
Yeah. No broken teeth.
Nope.
And his lower jaw is intact. When these guys get smacked, they tend to be loose here. Doesn't have a mark on them.
Suspecting a spinal cord injury, Dr. Tracy and Dr. Ned x-ray the bobcat, which brings some clarity to the diagnosis.
Hey, look, it could be a compression fracture. Doesn't look...
Because it certainly is shorter than the one ahead and the one behind.
Yeah.
No, that's not good news.
And it is pushed up at the...
Uh-huh.
That horse head is gone.
Yeah.
That horse head
Yep.
isn't there. Well, that's where it is. The radiograph showed that there was a compression fracture, which means that the spine got kind of pushed this way, but not this way. So the spinal cord itself was banged or bent, but not severed.
Treated for trauma, the bobcat is given fluids subcutaneously, and blood is drawn from its jugular vein for laboratory analysis of its overall health.
Got it.
Thank you. We'll give him anti-inflammatories to take down the swelling of his spinal cord and give him cage rest. And we'll see how he does over the course of what will be probably several weeks at least.
Over the next weeks of cage rest and therapy, it will become clear if the paralysis in the bobcat's back legs is permanent. If movement does not return quickly, odds are it will not recover. Outside, Sarah and Dr. Julie visit a flight pen to check on a new arrival.
All right, Mr. Cooper.
Renowned as a flying daredevil, the Cooper's hawk can sometimes get into trouble, as it seems this one did.
They're extremely acrobatic and will chase little birds at a high rate of speed and zipping back and forth in and out. They have long tails and short, round wings for maneuverability. And frequently they'll just slam into a building or a window or something like that and knock themselves out, which is apparently what this guy did. That's the usual reason that we see Cooper's hawks.
This bird, actually, the only abnormality that was found on the arrival, we took X-rays, and he had some what we call a pneumoceloma, which is actually air in the abdomen, And this is probably due to a rupture of an air sac or air sacs.
As rehabilitation manager Amanda and Dr. Julie examine the x-ray, they see evidence of an internal injury.
So as you can see, we have air here, here. The extent of the damage, though, I cannot really tell so far. I'm thinking that it must be a small tear in the air sac, and usually the air resorbs on its own within 24 hours if it's a small tear. The only thing we need to monitor for the next days will be his tolerance to exercise, because if he is having problems to catch his breath after an exercise, that will suggest us that the air sacs, that the damage must be more extensive than what we suspect at this point.
This bird must be restored to full health as quickly as possible, for Cooper's hawks fare badly in captivity, and a prolonged convalescence could cause harm.
Here's the little owl.
Presumed hit by a car, this screech owl was found lying unconscious in the road, one wing broken, and was brought to the center for treatment and surgery.
Okay, little owl.
After anesthetizing the owl, they prepare the site where an incision will be made by first plucking the feathers that cover it.
Can I leave secondary feathers?
Yes, you may leave secondary feathers. This owl has a broken ulna, which is one of the bones of the forearm, and the other forearm bone, the radius, is not broken. So actually, that bone being not broken next to the broken one is actually acting as an internal splint. But this owl will heal faster if we can get in a steel pin in the middle of the broken bone. So that's what we're going to try to do.
In the operating room, with the patient now prepped and anesthetized, Dr. Ned and Sarah plan their approach. The size of the patient, which weighs only 1/3 of a pound, is their most immediate challenge.
Oh, this guy weighs a little bit more than a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but just a little bit more.
You have to be really careful when you're trying to repair a broken bone in the wing of a bird the size of a screech owl, that you don't break it worse trying to stick pins through it.
Having made an incision, Dr. Ned prepares to thread the pin through the length of the fractured bone that is less than 1/4 of an inch in diameter.
Using metal pins in an orthopedic procedure helps line the bones back up again. The bones aren't going to heal or heal very well unless the ends are brought back into correct anatomical position.
The problem with doing this surgery in this little bird with these little bones and these little pins is you can't manipulate the bone to pin it because the pin just bends.
Take me a picture, please.
Now Sarah must take an x-ray to confirm that the broken bone has been correctly realigned.
Even though my fingers tell me where I think my pin has been placed, an x-ray now will show me exactly where my pin is, and I'll know if, do I need to go in a little bit further? Do I need to pull it out a little bit before I sew the skin up? It's still overlapped too much.
Yeah.
I need to redirect my pin. It's not exactly where it needs to be.
After a second try, another x-ray must be taken.
Come, little owl. Let's do this again. It's a logistical nightmare to have to get the animal into the other room, keep him asleep, keep him as sterile as possible, and then get back into the surgery without him waking up or hurting him more. Look, everybody, it's finally the film.
This time, x-rays confirm success.
That's perfect. That's right down the middle. The elbow is unaffected and the tip is just short of the carpal joint. I think I'll cut it off right there.
Cut it off and let's wake him up.
There he is. There's a bird underneath that drape. All right, this operation went just really well. This bird has a really good prognosis for return to flight. We're flapping now.
After the anesthesia wears off, the bird will begin a rehabilitation program that, if all goes well, may have him flying again in no time. After leaving the OR, Sarah checks up on the progress of the Cooper's hawk.
Hey, buddy.
In just a few days, the bird seems to have recovered, which is good news, for Sarah knows that confining this species of bird to a hospital pen is risky.
They're extremely energetic, nervous, flighty, fast birds, and don't take well to captivity. Frequently, they will not eat well in captivity. This bird seems to be the exception to that rule, which is very nice.
All signs indicate that the bird is ready to go.
I think he'd like to be up on the mountain, meet the other Cooper's hawks. I think tomorrow morning will be a good time to turn him loose. Okay.
Alone in his cage, this restless bird seems to be looking for a way out. But he'll have to wait until tomorrow for his freedom. After weeks at the center, the bobcat, whose back legs are paralyzed, has been slow to respond to physical therapy. To hasten its recovery, it will now begin a special kind of treatment.
Okay, we're anesthetizing our paralyzed bobcat today, and another veterinarian is going to perform acupuncture on this cat. Acupuncture is becoming more and more accepted as an alternative treatment in veterinary medicine all the time.
A veterinarian who regularly uses acupuncture to treat the dogs and cats in her own practice, Dr. Kitty is volunteering her services here on what will be her first bobcat patient.
This is governing vessel 14 right here. Traditional Chinese medicine theory is that it works because your body has qi, which is energy, flowing through meridians and channels. I just know that this stuff works.
Acupuncture is used quite extensively in the racehorse industry to improve racehorses that have lamenesses and that inhibits their ability to run fast.
Acupuncture needles come, these do at any rate, they're very fine stainless steel needles. They come in a plastic sheath and they're stuck in there. So what I do is I break that seal and then place the needle, the sheath on there, and tap it in. That gets it through the skin and then in like that. And those points on either side of the injury I'll be running electricity through. It's called electroacupuncture.
The level of electricity must be precisely calibrated to enhance the effect of the treatment.
It shortens the amount of time that you need to leave the needles in, and it stimulates the channel. So I have one set above and below on the right side, one set above and below on the left side.
The way to think about spinal injuries is like electrical wire, because it carries electrical impulses from the brain down the back to legs, arms, or wherever. And if those wires are only crimped or cranked, well then maybe after a while the electrical signal can start getting through again. So you're done, Kitty?
I'm done.
After 30 minutes, the acupuncture session, the first of several scheduled, is over.
Okay.
While the bobcat's prognosis is uncertain, the little screech owl, who had a broken wing, seems to be recovering quickly, though its progress must still be closely monitored. It's surely easy to see how the screech owl got its name.
He's pretty strong.
As the examination proceeds, Dr. Ned evaluates the owl's post-operative progress.
The site looks good, and the sutures look good.
Already take them off today.
Everything's looking absolutely wonderful at this point. The pin site, so this bird still has a pin sticking out of the side of his wing, but it looks completely not inflamed. And the incision, where I had to make in the middle of the wing to get the two ends of the bones together, looks just great. So everything looks pretty darn good at this point.
After the pins are removed, if all continues as well as it has today, the owl will be flying again in no time.
Okay. Thank you.
Following a regimen of weekly acupuncture treatments and daily physical therapy, the bobcat seems to be improving.
See it moves legs? Look at that.
For the first time, small movements can be observed.
His condition has definitely improved since he got here. He can move one leg around pretty well, or at least better than when he arrived.
Today, Dr. Tripp, an expert on small animal rehabilitation and a former student of Dr. Ned's, will provide physical therapy.
He's got a lot of tightness in here. It seems as though maybe this is more of what's contracting from him being, non-modal for a while.
As a complement to the acupuncture treatments, which seem to stimulate nerve impulses, Dr. Tripp's therapy is designed to exercise the muscles and promote flexibility.
And there is some contraction going on because of lack of use. I guess desk jobs, you sit at a desk all day long, you're obviously not going to be as limber because your muscles don't get to move through full range of motion. These guys need it to be released. It's okay, bud.
And while the injured bobcat may be down, it's definitely not out.
Don't get bit, don't get bit.
You want a towel? Does that help you at all? Bite the towel, buddy. It's okay. Bite the towel.
Okay, let's go back to what we were doing.
Okay. You okay?
I'm fine.
A healthy bobcat is 7.5 pounds of superb athlete that really doesn't like you very much. They're fast and strong. They're hunting machines.
Okay, partner. Anything else you need to do?
Nope, that'll be it for him.
One thing that's clear about this feisty patient, while the body may not yet be ready, the spirit is willing. Today, the little screech owl that had surgery will be radiographed to confirm that the bone has fully healed.
Looks pretty darn good. If the bird was completely feathered, he would almost be releasable based on this x-ray. But he needs, since he needs a little more feathers anyway, we'll let that callus mature a little bit more at the same time.
With a thumbs up from Dr. Ned, Sarah will see if the bird can fly and evaluate its chances for release.
That's pretty good for a little guy with ratty feathers. Yeah, he keeps his altitude. He doesn't gain altitude yet, but he's keeping his altitude, which, as poorly as his feathers look, is real good. He looks really good. For the surgery, he had some feathers plucked. You can see this wing just doesn't have the full feathering that that wing does. He's got a gap, and he's still got some feathers missing at the top. You pull a feather out, and it grows back within, depending upon the species of bird, a couple months. This guy's feathers should be back in a month or so.
While healing nicely, the noisy little screech owl still has a way to go.
He's probably got another month and a half of rehab just to grow all the feathers back, and it seems like his range of motion from the broken wing is really, really good. So all we're going to do now is play the waiting game and exercise him. I don't see any reason why he won't make a full recovery at this point. In you go.
It won't be long now before the bird with a mended wing will say goodbye.
I'm going to lift his...
After weeks of acupuncture treatment and physical therapy, the bobcat with the spinal injury seems to be progressing.
This is actually...
Look at him go.
Yeah. He's been doing this since the last acupuncture session, so...
Boy, man, his legs are moving an awful lot.
Isn't it? I thought that too.
To Dr. Julie, who has examined the bobcat almost every day, the improvement is obvious.
He's actually showing more resistance, and as you could see just before I started the physiotherapy, he was kicking with much more vigor than he ever used to do. We obviously, the acupuncture is doing something good.
Nerve impulses are clearly getting through to areas that were once immobile.
Looking better. So just a question of continuing the acupuncture on a regular basis, and we're still keeping our fingers crossed. Certainly there is something new today, something positive today about his problem, his condition. The only question is, will that keep improving? Only time will tell us.
For this severely injured bobcat, progress must be measured in small increments. But the indications of a possible recovery give grounds for hope.
So have you looked at this guy in the last couple days?
No.
Today, the Cooper's hawk will be given its freedom.
Florida, so he's flying well.
He's flying real well. He's goofy, just like a Cooper's hawk, but he seems to do real well. He's been eating consistently. He's certainly not going to kill our little white mice.
No, it's
And
they're such high-strung birds. The best thing to do for a bird like a Cooper's hawk is to release him as soon as possible. There's no good medical reason to keep him.
would you like to run your hands over him before I take him up the mountain?
Before it goes, Dr. Ned gives the bird one final look.
Particularly a bird like a Cooper's hawk, which is an extremely high-strung bird. They tend to bounce around their cages a lot. We just want to make sure that he hasn't hurt his feathers or banged up a wing while he's been waiting to be released.
He has no marks from captivity.
Not a broken feather.
When the bird first came in, he was kind of depressed. He didn't seem real feisty. He didn't seem like a true fighter. By the time he was ready to leave, he acted like a normal bozo, nutsy Cooper's hawk who doesn't want to have anything to do with people.
Let's let him go.
Okay, Birdie, just one quick ride. One quick ride.
Rehabilitator Rose, for whom this release is a first, joins Sarah in setting the bird free.
I've been here for 3 years and have yet to be on a raptor release.
This is so exciting, Rose.
Several miles from the center, Sarah and Rose select an area much frequented by raptors of all kinds, overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Come on, Bird, let's go join the hawks. Let's join the hawk watch. We chose to release him up on Afton Mountain because his release date came up during sort of the middle of the hawk migration, and one of the big East Coast hawk migration routes goes right over Rockfish Gap on Afton Mountain. So we thought that would be a good place to put him into the migration route so he could just continue to head south with and probably hook up with some other Cooper's hawks along the way.
Well, where there are birds, there are often bird watchers, like Jean and Kathy. The information they gather is important in understanding bird migration patterns and protecting bird habitat.
Have you got one, Jean? By bird watching and counting and keeping track of the health of the numbers of birds and the numbers of birds being hatched and migrating every year, we have a good idea of how our environment is doing. Okay, shall we see a Cooper's hawk real quick?
Now these veteran bird watchers are about to make a very unusual sighting.
They don't very often get to see them up close in the hand, so I think it was a real treat for them to get to see the bird up close before we turned him loose. And that's what they look like close up. This is an immature one. That nice long curved tail.
Yes, yes indeed. When she brings a bird in like that she's going to release, you get to see their eyes and the way they look at you. And just the fine detailing of the markings on them, they're beautiful.
Finding just the right spot, Sarah gets ready to say goodbye.
All right, you ready to go?
Taking advantage of the brisk tailwind, the fully recovered Cooper's hawk ascends and soars away forever.
Wow! Look at him go! We've been exercising this guy every day and feeding him and everything, and it's just great to be here on the day that he gets his freedom.
It's a nice windy day. Nothing thrills me more than to see the animals run away from me back into the wild after I've cared for them. Most of the animals don't have any particular appreciation of what we do for them, but it makes it all worthwhile when you get to see them flying off or running off where they belong. And this guy flew off where he belongs, out in the wind, going south.